Let's rock.
At this point, I'm very pleased to be able to help welcome our first speaker to kick off the XDS 2014. Ron Ashtiani has founded Atomhawk Design, a world-leading concept art and interactive design studio back in 2009. The studio has since worked on many high-profile projects for games, film, and online, including Mortal Kombat, Killzone, Injustice, Thor: The Dark World, and most recently, and which they're very proud of, Guardians of the Galaxy, which I understand is the most successful film of the year so far. Prior to Atomhawk, Cumron worked for world-leading games and entertainment companies. During the last 15 years, Ron has focused on artistic creative direction and management, playing a key role in the running of several studios and the development of over 20 projects, spanning games, digital media, and film. And his goal is to continue to push the boundaries of digital art and design through creativity, technology, and leadership. And today he's going to talk to us about harnessing creativity in the games industry. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ron Ashtiani.
As long ago as 1997, America produced $414 billion worth of books, films, music, TV shows, and of course, video games. Since then, creative products and entertainment IP have continued to be America's #1 export. Today, the total value of the US creative economy is estimated to be in the region of $5 trillion. Clearly, creative management is now at the core of the Western world economy. But at first glance, this would seem to be ironic because the creative activities historically do not have a commercial root. Right up to the beginning of the 20th century, the creative arts were sponsored by patrons. They believed that the black art could only thrive in non-judgmental and free environments. Even at this early stage, the patrons had grasped that the basic principles of people being more creatively productive if they are unrestrained and so enjoy what they're doing. At this point in time, truly creative people were seen to be heretics, eccentrics, and nonconformists. Well, obviously, not a lot has changed in the last 200 years. In fact, the creative process has dramatically changed because it has now become a commercial enterprise. In fact, managing people has become the creative art of the 21st century. In the past, creative individuals were like Batman, a loner, nocturnal, moody, and often hard to find. But now the challenges creatives face are beyond the reach of one single person. And so we must move to powerful collaborations, much like the Avengers of the art world. A team of the finest creative minds setting aside their differences for the greater good. This is the only way to succeed. While many ideas are better than one, the collaborative team must be carefully managed. Unlike industry, systems and process alone just won't do it. It has to be an effective management style. This must be flexible and adaptive and connects creativity to commercial enterprise. In non-creative businesses, a skilled worker is hired just for their ability to execute the task, and their personality is often almost irrelevant. With artists, the person and their skill are intrinsically linked. A manager needs to understand and relate to what motivates the individual. Managing creative people is often likened to herding cats, because creative people tend to just go off and do their own thing. Equally, the emotion involved in the process can make people possessive about their craft, while creative confidence is often a fragile thing that doesn't thrive under pressure. Fundamentally, creative people are very independent-minded, and most of them don't like being told what to do, and so they resist being managed. If you micromanage creativity, you can kill it, because freedom of thought and action go hand in hand with great ideas. In its raw form, creativity is inherently unpredictable and risky. But as a manager of a creative team, you must always be under pressure to minimize those risks and deliver results. So here's the dilemma. To succeed, you need to find a way of giving the creative team freedom, while managing the control of the outcome and also managing the risk of everything getting out of control. This is not easy. There's also a belief that a distributed team can make this harder. But this just isn't true. You can use an external and internal team in just the same way. The games industry is a relative newcomer to distributed teams, and Atomhawk has been on the learning curve along with the rest of the industry. However, more recently, we've learned some approaches from the more mature film industry, and this is a good opportunity to take a look at our work. You may have spotted elements of Thor 2 Dark World and the more recent Guardians of the Galaxy. A great deal of our creative management process has been influenced by this work. I'll look at some of those approaches later, but for now, I'll continue focusing on what we've been doing. The basic components of business that are embodied by management, measurement, communication, and control are the overarching principles that drive our business. They are embedded in and delivered through a process of continuous creative convergence. This is an approach that continually reviews and refreshes creative development and could be called our management style. For us, creative convergence starts with understanding the way our client wants to work with us. I call this tuning into the client. The client approach frequently varies, so for best results, it needs to be clearly understood right from the outset. Of course, the creative approach the client wishes to take must be supported by appropriate amounts of time and budget. It also has to reflect the level of trust the client is prepared to invest in us, as well as how much of a tolerance to failure the client has in their approach to the project. I should state that this is not a catastrophic failure. It is a natural part of the development process. For example, in many cases, we're requested to ask for forgiveness and not permission. This gives us a license to potentially reframe the client brief introduce new concepts, extend ideas in order to achieve the goal. A recent client requested and got 50 images from exactly the same brief. The client just wanted to pick one from a wonder wall of 50 ideas. The other 49 were essentially failed attempts. But they were an implicit part of the overall creative process that leads to the final result. After all, from Edison to Apple, we all know that a failed attempt is just one component of the final success. In this form, failure is factored into the creative convergence process. We funnel ideas as part of honing a design, and as we do this, we have the opportunity to spot a creative gem. These are ideas that twinkle, totally exceptional, from a concept board that is good or even great. The gem stands out. Creative management starts with our managers clearly defining the box that is defined by the brief. How big is it? What shape is it? Being specific allows the team to understand what is in and outside of the brief. And this doesn't relate to the cliche of thinking outside of the box. It's actually totally the opposite. Real creativity comes from a brief with well-defined goals that generate thinking within a framework. This empowers our team to scope a large number of ideas that fall within a predefined box. This generates multiple independent approaches that highlight the style and flair of each artist. With these on the table, we have the first of what might be 3 or 4 iterative review points. This is where the creativity of the team is refocused on the key idea that stands out as being a precious gem. The collaborative team then reduces in size as they develop a reduced number of ideas. These further developed ideas are then revisited and again reduced in number along with the size of the team until the gem is polished. This funneling process stimulates highly effective creative convergence that is built on the management team's trust in the artists, and in turn, the client's trust in a self-regulating supplier. This bottom-up partner approach is the way that many of our clients work with us. The initial investment of trust delivers exceptional results, while saving the client time and money in micromanaging their supplier. Some clients are happy to give us an open brief, a great big box. This method of working means we are both prepared to accept that there are some ideas that just won't work, but then there are some super ideas that they wouldn't have thought of themselves. We've demonstrated time and time again that this approach does save our clients time and effort managing us, while also delivering innovative ideas. But however, clients also frequently give us a brief with very specific ideas, but then leave the door open for input from us. In this situation, we have what I call a little bit of wiggle room. Should a new idea come to light that needs development, and in this instance, we'll use a much tighter form of that funneling process. But occasionally, we have clients with a very fixed budget. And in situations like this, they need to clearly communicate exactly what they envisage the best result to be. Without a very, very clear brief that excludes the need for reworking the material, this can be a very difficult scenario to manage, because there is no time, no money, and no room to make changes. All 3 scenarios require a brief where quality is everything. No matter what the size of the box, the brief needs to have a clearly defined goal. A brief that delivers a series of micromanaged tasks will not allow the creative team to get the best. We often think a creative is the person who does the hands-on craft, like a writer or a dancer or a musician, or indeed Lord Vader, skillfully killing people with his lightsaber. But spotting a diamond in the rough, an uncut gem of an idea, and coaching and guiding and facilitating the team to polish it is a craft all in its own. This type of creativity is more about directing, coordinating, facilitating the efforts of others. Not just about management, it is an authoritative leadership style built on trust, facilitation, and coaching. It must be authoritative because the team must be mobilized towards a single vision. The trust in your team can be encouraged to thrive through careful facilitation. Finally, you must be ready to coach the team so that you hone the skills and the crafts of each individual to maximize their input into the project. This will also involve delegating responsibility and building a belief that anything is possible. This leadership approach is at the heart of our success over the last 5 years, and when combined with our creative funneling process, it is a fantastic combination. But it has not always been so. In my early years as an art director, I tended to have a very fixed vision of how the work should be. I was the big idea that dominated and drove the whole project. And in my case, I was attempting to impose management on the process. I was demanding compliance while setting high standards. Yes, there was a lot of demanding. Even coercion, which doesn't go down well with independently minded creatives. On many occasions, it did surprisingly produce some great results, but at considerable cost to morale and everyone's exhaustion from the pressure. However, as I described earlier, my approach today is set the must-have parameters, or the box, and let the artist run wild with the concept in the early stages. The must-have elements may be quite specific, but how they get there is entirely up to them. As long as we have gated review points, everything is fine. It can be very productive to set a high-level, goal-centered brief and then let the team crack on unhindered. That initial burst of creativity can really advance a project and expose some unique thinking. Unfortunately, unclear goals can lead to some fantastic designs ending up in the trash because they were wrong for the project. And when this happens, the expectations of the artist must be carefully managed. It's all too easy to shut down the creative drive of an artist with some faint praise and a rejection. The shortage of ideas is obvious in the number of prequels and sequels. Recently, a lot of creative effort has gone into making the familiar feel new and the new feel familiar. However, taking something familiar and adding a new twist can be very provocative. Anything from works of art, nature, everyday objects can form the basis for inspiration. For one of the movies we worked on recently, we were frantically trying to define an enemy spacecraft with absolutely no joy. One morning, the production designer sent us a photo from his shower at home. Instantly, I thought, this is not something that I need to see. However, a more detailed examination of the picture, it was the shower head in his shower. Charlie had just looked up and there was his inspiration. Frankly, I am just glad he looked up, because if he looked down, he might have gone with the obvious. Inspiration for ideas can be as simple as Charlie in the shower, but sometimes it has to be the result of relentless and rigorous gumshoe research. But often, it is about developing an expansive mental image library. This library is usually developed through personal experience, travel, and generally going through your life with your eyes wide open rather than wide shut. In some cases, my mental image library has given me just the smallest seed of a concept. In other cases, it has given me reference for a significant detail or a complete design. Shapes, textures, and colors are all stored in a format that cannot be seen on Google because they are just the feeling behind an idea. A new creative concept cannot be from an existing idea in the medium you are working. It really is helpful to work with people who have expansive mental image libraries. Cross-pollination and interconnection of images help the team look past, beyond, and around ideas while never letting anyone off with the easy or obvious. But I am afraid to say that a rubbish idea that is beautifully executed with superb technical painting and drawing skill is still a rubbish idea. Early on, I mentioned measurement as an important part of the business mix. I must acknowledge that measurement of creativity, artistic skill, and ideas can be a tough one. But measured it must be, if time is to be managed and cost is to be associated with creation. Often, the best measurement of commercial creativity is how happy the client is, combined with how quickly the artist got to where the client needed the work to be. In this situation, it is less about measurement and more about benchmarking across a large range of projects. Measurement is also important when evaluating the output of an individual artist. Inevitably, there is always a balancing act between speed, quality, and time. I also mentioned control earlier, and I should explain that this is about the use of our creative convergence process and not about controlling hordes of creative artists. Early on when I founded Atomhawk, I was guilty of allowing this negative type of control into the business. I made a mistake of promoting a great creative guy into management because I thought surely he could lead by example. Surely. But as it happened, no, he couldn't. Now, I will say that names have been changed to protect the guilty. I should have realized, as all the signs were there, Simon was an eccentric nonconformist with a permanent beard and permanent walking boots. Simon thought that charisma was on the 25th of December, but he could light up a room just by walking out of it. But as a team lead and a very gifted designer, Simon was required to employ a graduate. He chose Dave to join the team, and Simon set about assigning him with all the dog's body jobs that he hated doing. Lucky Simon, unlucky Dave. Right from the outset, Simon was controlling Dave and not managing him. 6 months later, nothing had changed, and so I had to intervene. Simon reluctantly gave Dave some more exciting work to do. Dave loved it and proved to be very, very good at his job. Success, I thought. But now Simon was unhappy because he felt that Dave was encroaching on his role just by being good at his job. Simon could not collaborate. He could only see management by control because his focus was on the ownership of the work. Needless to say, Simon did not change, and he made a very controlled exit from the business. However, Dave got better and better, and now he runs that collaborative team as a team. It is essential to have a management structure that facilitates teamwork by recognizing the power of creative collaboration. But managers must also recognize that there are two types of artists in this world. Creative thinkers tend to speed paint, generate a lot of ideas, but get bored once they come to detailing. And then there are those who love the craft of painting and drawing. These people get totally enthralled in the detailing process. The downside is they often jump straight into the craft and ignore the creative development process. Okay, so the very best artists actually do both, switching modes at different stages in the work. But an essential part of managing is to recognize the skill sets of both of them. Play to their strengths and give them things that they will enjoy. Enjoyment is everything. But when people love what they do, they can be possessive. and this can lead to a protective attitude. Now, I believe this is often rooted in company culture rather than in the individual. If your company culture is to respect great work wherever it is from, it will rub off on your team. The danger of not being respectful is that it leads to very narrow-minded and an elitist view of the world. This in return creates a reluctance to take on other people's ideas and iterate on them to create better ones. For this reason, I have in our studio what I call our wall of awesome. This is where exceptional work is recognized and appreciated by the whole team. But generating awesome ideas under commercial pressures of time and money can always be a potential problem. The right level of pressure drives us to make decisions that clarify thinking. But the application of pressure needs clear goals and a thought-out process to act as a positive force. The issue is that the level of pressure at which people find it helps them perform is different in every individual. The majority of artists in my team seem to be able to work to any deadline and any spec without cracking or even getting flustered. But we had one notable exception, an artist capable of genius-level work. But the mere mention of a deadline sent him into a negative panic that totally paralyzed his ability. The truth was I had to treat him like the golden goose. Our golden goose was called Jim. And like many of these golden geese I've worked with, he was blissfully unaware of his own genius. But then Jim was also blissfully unaware of a lot of other things. Super critical of his own work, he hated everything he produced, and this would often result in a creative meltdown. Perfection was a negative force for Jim. His genius had to be coached out of him. Was it worth all that trouble? Absolutely. But with hardcore perfectionists come problems that don't exist for mere mortals. An example of this is a project where Jim had almost finished a breathtaking piece of work. Very close to the end of the day and the deadline, he had just a couple of small details to finish to make the work complete. I returned after 40 minutes, expecting everything to be done. How wrong I was. Jim had decided that he really couldn't live with the artwork and he needed to rework it. In doing so, he'd ruined it, realized what he'd done, panicked, tried to fix it, and ruined it some more. On seeing this car crash, I was horrified. But I calmly gathered myself and reassured him that this was not a problem, because he could just revert back to the previous file version and then finish it off. At this point, he looked up at me and said, "Which previous version? That was the original, I've saved over it." Oh, Jim, nice but dim. In truth, we had to change our process, and we did. Artwork changes are now gated. Once a stage of an image is approved, it's locked. If the artist really feels it needs changing, they must consult a member of the management team. Protecting artists from their own desire for inaccessible perfection through inappropriate revisions is another creative management must. It's always hard when running a creative business to balance between the freedom that delivers quality and, of course, the financial bottom line. The balance between these elements is often in flux, but in my view, the key to success is just simply not quoting your budget so close to the wire. In this way, the commercial pressure does not hurt the quality of the work. Protecting the quality of the work must be front and center for the management of any successful creative company. The quality of the work is also obviously judged on artistic and creative criteria, but the key measure of quality is how well the work matches the client's needs and desires. Strangely, this is sometimes different from the brief. So when a client isn't really asking for what they actually need, we will help them steer them in the right direction. And this is absolutely not arrogance on our half. We're just both trying to drive towards helping them achieve their goal. Gatekeeping the defined goals of the brief requires the team to stay true to the client needs and desires, while also staying true to our company's quality and creative values. From your visit here this year, you may be aware that Vancouver is a creative crucible. With 4 film studios, it is the third largest movie production center in North America. It also has one of the largest VFX production stages in North America. In terms of creative management and leadership, I believe the games industry still has a lot to learn from the film industry. The movie industry discovered early on that it could not maintain enormous creative teams that were only used for a fraction of the production period. And as a result, they developed a huge network of creative supplier partnerships. But at the heart of their partnerships are 2 key drivers. Firstly, trust, built in a unique blend of asking for forgiveness and not permission, and allowing realistic budgeting. Secondly, great briefs that provide well-defined goals and not a series of micromanaged tasks. We need to learn from the movie production teams and their creative supplier partnerships, and Atomhawk have done this by using the creative convergence process that I outlined earlier. There are, of course, some exceptions to collaboration in the movie industries, as seen in the Mel Gibson School of Movie Making. Meanwhile, on screen, movie collaborations are everywhere, from old school Ocean's 13, X-Men, The Expendables, The Avengers, and even The Town. In our industry, we know the power of player collaboration, because player collaboration has been built into the very games we create. Collaboration in a creative studio focuses on choosing the right people to create and the right people to lead, and so you get the best out of everyone. At Atomhawk, we are aiming to be the Avengers of the art world. A team of the finest creative minds setting aside their differences for the greater good. And as we strive to do this, we work hard to manage, measure, communicate, and control. But fundamentally, it is our love of the craft that drives our quality in a business where creative quality can be the only measure of success. Thank you. Thank you, folks.